In Greenland, ice dominates every horizon, interrupted only by the thin strip where life manages to make its way. Deep within it, a vast, seemingly eternal, icy plain stretches out, barely interrupted by an irregular frame of darker tones. These earthy browns and ephemeral greens announce the presence of life, marking the boundary where Greenland's true history unfolds. Here each coastal region follows a distinct natural order. In the south, low shrubs and hardy flowers take advantage of every hour of daylight, providing sustenance for Arctic hares and caribou that graze in scattered groups. Further north, the terrain hardens, summers are short, and seals and Arctic foxes roam beaches and ice floes, adapting to every change the tide brings. In this delicate balance, any change in the inland ice or ocean currents can alter the rhythm of life along the coast. All this life depends on a fragile balance, intimately linked to the ice that dominates the island's interior. It's not a static backdrop. It shapes the climate, guides rivers, and regulates access to nutrients. Ephemeral streams are born with seasonal melting ice, carrying minerals that nourish microscopic algae. These algae sustain schools of fish, and the fish in turn feed seabirds, seals, and polar bears that patrol the coast. Each element acts in synchrony with the others, and any alteration has repercussions throughout the entire chain. Greenland never remains unchanged. The sea can close routes in a matter of hours with icebergs carried by invisible currents, and the weather can go from clear skies to a full-blown blizzard without warning. The life that develops here learns to anticipate, to react, to survive, constantly adapting to the changes imposed by the ice and the sea. Amidst this vastness, a figure advances. There's no hurry in his gait, but each step brings him closer to a goal yet to be revealed. In Greenland, even the most powerful hunter knows that success is not always guaranteed. To the north, on the northwest coast near Melville Bay, sea ice extends into almost perfect, smooth and unobstructed plains. Here, the terrain offers no cover, and the only way to approach prey is to blend into the landscape itself, a skill that the polar bear, the Arctic's largest land predator, masters perfectly. He recognizes every irregularity in the ice, and every current of air that carries with it the scent of potential prey. After hours of surveillance and observation, the bear begins its journey across the snow, putting into practice all the lessons learned. This adult male has been scouring the ice for days in search of prey. He traveled more than 20 kilometers in the last day, guided by a sense of smell capable of detecting a seal from more than a kilometer away. The wind carries scattered scents, and the white monotony threatens to hide everything, but his senses remain alert, filtering every sign that could mean food. Something interrupts the calm. His eyes have scanned over and over again. Between the snow and ice, where everything seems to repeat itself, he perceives a relief that doesn't fit. At first, it's just another shape on the plain, but something about it holds him back. A subtle movement, a flicker. His breathing slows and his muscles tense. Whatever's there, it's alive. It's a ringed seal. It's far from the water and without a nearby breathing hole. An unusual opportunity. What's it doing here, exposed in open terrain? The answer lies in their life cycle. During this time, females dig burrows in the snow to give birth and protect their young. At times like this, they go outside to regulate their temperature and simply rest in the weak Arctic sunlight. The seal's strategy is to rely on camouflage, to make its white and grey body disappear into the snow. This time, however, camouflage might not be enough for what awaits him. The bear has already sensed it. What seemed like a simple mound reveals a living body, motionless but vigilant. But he knows that if he rushes, the seal will escape, so he moves with extreme caution, adapting each movement to the terrain and ensuring that each step on the ice is silent and calculated. Its movements stop at any sign of alert, and it uses the undulations of the surface to break its silhouette and reduce its visibility. In the last few meters, unhurriedly but with absolute attention, the bear flattens itself against the icy ground. Its progress becomes slow, almost imperceptible. With every passing moment, every movement is precisely measured, and the approach, which covered barely 100 meters, took more than 30 minutes, proving that patience is your best weapon. The seal, unaware of the imminent danger, closes its eyes for a moment, confident in its camouflage, a fatal mistake. The bear accelerates in an instant, unleashing all its strength. Its front paws cut through the ice with sharp claws, covering the distance in seconds. The seal reacts late. It tries to turn toward the solid ice, but the predator is already upon it. A sharp blow stops it, followed by a precise bite to the skull. The resistance is immediately extinguished, and silence returns to the landscape, interrupted only by the wind. The hunt was perfect. For the polar bear, this catch represents thousands of calories that will allow it to survive for several days, since maintaining its weight and resisting extreme cold depends on prey like this. His energy is replenished, and the time gained gives him leeway in a territory where every move counts. After its last kill, this enormous mammal pauses for a moment, assessing the cold air around it. He no longer seeks food. There is something else that drives him. A subtle but persistent scent carried by the wind captures your attention. Survival has given way to a new instinct, one that will lead him to follow signs that could alter his path and that of his species. This is a female in heat, moving along the sea ice. Their presence triggers natural competition between males, and every second that passes can make the difference between securing an opportunity or being left behind. Will he be able to find her before another male gets there, or will competitive instincts define his future? Throughout the year, in these Arctic latitudes, polar bears remain mostly solitary, but during the brief mating season, their isolation is broken, and individuals converge following chemical cues that could alter their path. Each male needs a large territory to survive, and food scarcity prevents large gatherings. But for a few days a year, that rule is broken. Males and females meet on the ice, guided by chemical signals carried by the wind for miles. The male advances following a faint scent, unmistakable to his instinct, and each step brings him closer to the figure silhouetted on the horizon. The female in front walks across the ice shelf at her own pace. Sometimes she maintains a straight line, then suddenly turns without warning, as if gauging the steadiness of the person following her. This play of distance isn't accidental. It doesn't provoke it, but it doesn't stray too far either, maintaining a balance between interest and caution. The physical difference between the two is evident. He can double her weight and strength, but even so, he knows that a hasty approach could trigger a confrontation. Therefore, every meter gained is carefully considered. Females don't hesitate to defend their space with growls and bites, and if they aren't willing, they vanish among the ice blocks as if they had never been there. Only when the initial tension dissipates and the distance shortens does courtship begin. At this point, there is no dancing or singing. The dialogue occurs in another language, one that doesn't require sound. Touch, scent, and posture are the only signals needed to determine whether a union is possible. The male advances at her side, maintaining a prudent distance. He walks with measured steps, his body low, his muscles tense, ready to respond to any unexpected reaction. The female, receptive on this occasion, allows him to stay close, and each movement becomes part of a carefully controlled sequence. The courtship continues with slow movements, and the female evaluates each gesture. She stands at attention, watching out of the corner of her eye, while the male tilts his head slightly and flexes his limbs in a signal that reduces his threatening appearance. The initial tension transforms into an expectant calm. The male remains alert to any change in the female's posture, aware that a simple turn or step back would be enough to end everything in an instant. After several controlled attempts and a patience that demonstrates his strength, the white beast manages to advance without interference. He has overcome the distance without causing alarm, and this silent demonstration of resilience convinces the female to accept him. The mating proceeds without interruption, marking the beginning of a brief alliance that, if conditions permit, will give rise to the next generation. As the daylight fades and the following hours pass calmly, the newly formed bond begins to strengthen. Over the next few days, they will travel together, alternating between hunting and resting. It will be a short alliance, but enough for the gestation to begin its course. In Karnak, these interactions occur at a key time of year. Females who have already given birth months ago focus on feeding their young, while those in heat seek out a strong mate because the survival of the next generation depends on this brief encounter. Even so, biology is relentless. Even in the midst of reproductive season, energy is king. If the male doesn't get enough to eat, he'll lose strength and won't be able to sustain the effort of following the female. She, for her part, will not accept a weakened mate, as her instinct always favors the one who can transmit the greatest resistance to the offspring. In Greenland, even in moments of greatest social closeness, isolation never completely disappears, and when the temporal bond is broken, each person resumes their journey until they are lost in the icy immensity. But what happens after that fleeting encounter on the ice floe, when each one returns to their solitude? In the following months, the ice layer hardens, temperatures drop further, and life retreats to the few safe havens offered by the coast. In one of them, a female polar bear waits, hidden in the darkness, for the moment to return to the outside. Months later, in the far north of Greenland, where the sea ice of the Baffin Sea clings to the coast like an immobile barrier, the female emerges after a silent gestation. The snow that surrounds it bears the hallmarks of the harshest winter, compact blocks of hardened ice, flat plains, and a silence that only the wind breaks with its wandering passage. She's not alone. Two small white shadows hesitate behind her paws. They are their pups, born in the safety of the burrow during the months when the sun never crossed the horizon. They survived the first part of their lives feeding exclusively on their mother's fat-rich milk. But now the ice calls them to the open world. Here, every step you take is a lesson, and every mistake can cost you your life. The exit from the burrow is slow. The mother scans the horizon, sniffs the air, and advances with calculated steps. The territory seems empty, but in these latitudes the threat can be invisible until it's too late. Between the undulations of the ice, a huge figure advances with a slow pace, an adult male. Their size exceeds that of the female, and their presence is imposing. In the Arctic, some males see the pups as an opportunity. Eliminating them forces the female to go into heat earlier than expected. The female immediately intervenes. She lowers her head, bristles her fur, and lets out a deep roar that echoes across the frozen plain. The male observes her, assesses her, and after a tense exchange of glances, slowly departs. The threat recedes, but the danger never completely disappears. The lesson for the pups is clear. Strength is not an optional resource here. It is a constant necessity, and now it is hunger that dictates the next move. The female guides her pups to an area of cracks in the ice, places where the seals must come out to breathe. The journey is long. They advance with measured steps, often stopping to sniff the air or avoid patches of cracked ice. The sun barely touches the horizon, marking a slow shifting of shadows across the white plain. Upon arrival, the mother calmly surveys the area before signaling the cubs to stay back. Now it's all about stealth. He lies down next to an opening, motionless, with his body aligned with the wind so that his scent does not betray his presence. He listens to the dull crunch of ice beneath his paws, the murmur of water churning in the depths. The minutes pass, stretching out as if time itself had stopped. The restless puppies watch her silently, learning without moving. Suddenly, a barely perceptible movement occurs in the distance. A seal pokes its snout out. The burst of energy is instantaneous. The female pounces with surgical precision, breaks the ice, and within seconds the prey is secured. The cubs approach, first cautiously, then excitedly, tasting fresh meat for the first time. This moment is much more than food. It is their first hunting lesson, the beginning of their learning as ice predators. The mother controls the situation, allowing them to eat, but ensuring that energy is administered fairly. Their care is almost excessive, but in the Arctic, each calf is an irreplaceable treasure. Losing one would mean wasting years of effort, and in this environment there are no second chances. With their stomachs full and danger momentarily at bay, the family rests on the ice. The mother holds her head high, looking out at the horizon, while the cubs snuggle up to her side, trusting. Over this vast and unforgiving landscape, she is not just the apex predator. She is a guardian, a teacher, and a protector, because in these extreme lands, the polar bear not only survives, it imposes its law, and as long as the ice exists, it will remain the undisputed ruler of this white kingdom. But in the high Arctic, even a sovereign's banquet does not remain peaceful for long. What a mother bear and her cubs leave behind soon becomes a target for other inhabitants of the sea ice. In the hardened snow, a trail of dark stains snakes with the wind like an open wound in the landscape. The thick, oily scent travels far, carried by icy currents that bear the sign of a recent feast. Several hundred meters away, a small silhouette advances close to the ground, stopping every few steps to sniff the air. The Arctic fox measures every movement, careful not to attract the attention of the white giant, who, along with her cubs, moves away toward a horizon that never seems to shorten. For hours he patiently followed its trail, not for the prey itself, but for what it would inevitably leave behind. In this frozen world, carrion is too valuable a resource to waste. Their strategy is simple. They wait for the exact moment when the rightful owners have had enough and abandon the unprotected area. And now that moment seems to be near. The small carnivore stops behind a low dune of compacted snow. One of the bear cubs has lingered, sniffing the air, and for a few seconds the tension is absolute. Any movement would give it away. It remains motionless, barely breathing until the calf decides to follow its mother and disappears behind a ripple. Then an opportunity opens. The fox approaches the feasting site, where traces of fat and fragments of meat cling to the fur. There's no time to choose. Every bite is concentrated energy that can make the difference between surviving the winter or succumbing to the cold. He tears off a piece and chews it quickly, his ears swiveling alert to any noise. The impromptu feast doesn't last long. Kittiwakes begin to arrive, uttering high-pitched cries that break the icy silence. A shadow passes across the snow, a crow glides low, and others approach from the horizon. The fox makes an instinctive decision. It sinks its teeth into a piece of fat and drags it away, avoiding the harassment of the birds. With the loot secured, he heads into the tundra. There he buries it, covering it with snow and marking the spot so he can return when he needs to. Beneath this layer of ice, the meat remains intact for weeks, ready to be used whenever hunger strikes. In these extreme lands, preserving what others leave behind isn't opportunism, it's pure survival. With the hiding place secured, he resumes his advance under the cutting wind, moving close to the ground with his tail as a counterweight. Its body blends into the snowy terrain until it becomes almost invisible. Only its eyes and nose, two black dots on a blanket of absolute white, betray its presence in a landscape without shelter where invisibility is the most important weapon. And for that strategy to be possible, every detail of your body is made to withstand this place. Their fur isn't just a coat, it's a precise work of adaptation. Beneath the skin, a dense undercoat traps still air and retains heat even at temperatures that would freeze their breath in seconds. Above that inner layer, long guard hairs act as a tight seal, blocking frost and preventing moisture from penetrating to the underside. Every contact with the ground is calculated to avoid losing energy. The pads, covered in coarse fur, allow them to move on hard snow without slipping and insulate their skin from ice. Even the animal's shape reflects this constant struggle. Short ears that reduce heat loss, a compact snout that minimizes exposure. Everything about them represents efficiency and endurance taken to the limit. In an environment where any mistake is paid for with hunger, every sense is always on alert, and what good is all this adaptation if not to detect what others would miss? Suddenly he stops, his ears turned forward as if pointing. Beneath the crust of snow, something is moving. There's no scent to follow. The wind carries everything away, only hearing remains, capable of detecting the tiny scrape of a body against the ice. Take a step back, another, as your back arches and your muscles tense. It jumps in a clean, short arc, breaking the crust with a dull sound. The fox sinks up to his chest, pinned in the newly opened hole. Lemming hangs inert between its fangs. A precise bite to the base of the skull has ended the hunt. This rodent is the most common prey in its winter diet. An adult fox needs to catch several each day between 8 and 12 to cover its energy needs and maintain a stable body temperature. Although it is not always so lucky, and in times of scarcity, it resorts to any resource, from seabirds rummaging in the snow and ringed seal pups in spring to eggs, carrion left by wolves or polar bears, and even fish caught in shallow water. In summer, when the ice retreats, it adds insects, berries, and any small vertebrate it can catch to its diet. This ability to adapt and take advantage of what each season offers is what keeps this carnivorous predator at the top of its game, even in the most hostile conditions. But this time, luck was on their side, and the captured lemming is still fresh as it makes its way toward the shelter of a rock. His stomach is still full after feasting on the carrion left by the polar bear, but an Arctic fox never turns down a good hunt. As before, he digs a hole again and buries it, not because he needs it at that moment, but so that he has it ready when hunger returns. With his reserve safely tucked away, he shakes the snow off his whiskers and pauses for a moment, sitting on his hind legs. The tail, thick and long, wraps around the body like a living scarf. There's no sign of distress. The wind has changed, now carrying a salty scent from a distant fjord. The fox turns its head there, assessing. Then, noiselessly, it moves away among the undulations until even the two black dots disappear and nothing remains but the eternal tundra. In that silence, the snow crunches under another weight, denser and more constant, as if the plain had decided to reveal a new inhabitant. What if polar bears and foxes weren't the only hunters roaming Greenland? In the distance, they are barely visible as moving patches against the flat light. With each meter gained, these shadows become more pronounced, and the outline begins to reveal itself until the figures become clear. 7 wolves cut diagonally through the snow, their chests thrust forward and their heads lowered to reduce air resistance. They move in a formation that stretches or compacts as the terrain demands, always maintaining rhythm and direction. Unlike their temperate forest relatives, where the coat displays shades of grey, brown and black, here the coat remains white most of the year, only acquiring a creamy hue in summer. The body is more compact than that of other wolves. The ears are shorter, the paws more robust, and the fur thickens to cover even the soles, forming an insulating sole that bites into the snow without freezing. Adaptation is not a list of traits but a method where each form responds to a heat loss that is avoided, a step that is made sustainable, and an approach that does not give itself away. Upon reaching a depression in the terrain, the group slows down. A fresh trail remains in the snow crust, and the air carries a scent that everyone recognizes. An open semicircle is formed. The adults in the center stand next to the remains and wait. There's no rush. The order is always the same. First, the reproductive nucleus is fed, then the rest. While eating, their bodies remain aligned, covering flanks and closing gaps. In Greenland, even when eating, wolves maintain a strict formation. One of the subadults decides to try his luck early. He crouches forward, looking for a gap between 2 adults to enter from the left. The nearest wolf shifts position and blocks him with a gentle shove, enough to make him retreat. The young man takes a few steps back, measures another entrance, and tries again. This time, another adult steps out and diverts him to a point where the wind blows headlong and the snow is harder. It insists a third time. It lowers its neck, stretches its snout, and looks for a firm place for its front paws. The adult covering that side accelerates 2 steps and pushes it away more forcefully. The subadult loses traction and is left outside the semicircle. There are no prolonged bites or chases. The language of the group is distance. This is how they decide who gets in and who gets out. As the dominants finish, 2 other subadults approach the expelled one and push it further away, closing a wide arc to prevent its return. The pattern repeats itself. 1 advance, 1 cut, 1 retreat. Exclusion isn't a single shock, but a chain of small interruptions. Hunger accelerates decisions, and scarcity hardens them. On days like this, 1 kill isn't enough for everyone, and maintaining order ensures the group can hunt tomorrow. When nothing but bones remains, the wolves reorganize and resume their march. The formation stretches toward a low relief in the west, where the wind blows less. The white bodies are chained together with precision, opening a path and closing ranks as the terrain demands. The separated subadult follows them after a pause, but no longer follows them. Every meter it delays increases the distance, and in a flat landscape, a few meters are like a wall. In Arctic wolf dynamics, cooperation is not an optional social gesture, but the only way to bring down prey that far exceeds an individual's weight, to defend what is found, and to fill gaps when the terrain leaves anyone left behind exposed. This cooperation depends not only on group coordination, but also on physical characteristics that allow them to sustain it under any circumstances. The white camouflage makes it easy to approach without giving oneself away on the plains. The short ears and compact snout reduce heat loss, and the dense fur on the soles protects the skin from ice and provides traction where others slip. None of these traits alone would solve a long chase or a siege in a blizzard, but together they maintain the rhythm that decides whether a group completes the search and find circuit on a day where light is scarce. But what happens when one of them is left out of that very precise organization? In Greenland, that means being exposed to the emptiness and the wind. And now, that's the place of the subadult. Now he stops and looks south, where the surface falls gently, and the wind deposits a dusting of snow that erases footprints a few meters away. Not a single rock breaks the uniformity of the terrain. Alone, every kilometer costs more energy than it returns. Every hunting attempt adds losses that cannot be recovered. The comparison with forest and grassland wolves, with their grey and brown coats, becomes concrete here. In those landscapes, the vegetation cover, the variety of prey, and the temperature make it possible for a lone wolf to survive for longer periods. But in Greenland, the plain offers no corners. The hardened snow throws the animal into the open air, and the distance to the next meal isn't worth the energy it takes to reach it. The wind rises and falls in gusts that seem like the ground breathes. The group is now a small line heading towards the relief, maintaining cohesion, conserving warmth by sharing the route and sharing the effort of opening and following the trail. Subadult's back is deprived of that shared economy. Each stretch must break the crust alone, decide directions alone, and endure the full force of air on its face. A body prepared for this climate is no longer sufficient if the logistics of the species, that precise organization that regulates when it moves, when it eats, when it waits, stops supporting it. He continues walking south without changing his pace. His feet dig in just enough, his white coat collects frost that doesn't penetrate, his dark nose points to nothing. The snow falls in loose grains that are less than snowfall and more than dust. Within minutes, the trail it leaves behind is completely erased. On the horizon, the group of 7 bodies is reduced to a clear vibration on the grey, and soon there are no figures left, only the white and eternal tundra. The plain remains constantly silent, but nothing is still. The air, the cold, and hunger continue their course. In this place, expulsion is a calculation. A wolf separated from the pack has few options. Without cooperation, the chances of hunting or weathering the elements are reduced to almost zero. In this case, the subadult will never catch up with the herd again. The distance grows, the energy level decreases, and every passing hour brings it closer to an outcome that never takes long to arrive here. In Greenland, when a predator loses its foothold, there are no second chances. Life on the ground depends on the strength of the group. Without it, everything is shortened: hunting, endurance, days. But this territory doesn't belong only to those who travel it on snow. Higher up, another realm decides what lives and what dies, where speed replaces endurance and height offers an advantage over any prey. If the ground no longer belongs to the wolf, who then rules from the heavens? In Greenland's vast wilderness, not all predators move at ground level. Some dominate from above, where speed and precision determine survival. Among them, one stands out: the gerfalcon, the supreme aerial predator of these latitudes. More robust than its temperate climate relatives, its compact and muscular body maintains agility even in extreme temperatures. The dense, thick plumage acts as a natural coat, while the coloration adapts to the environment. In snow-covered areas, white individuals predominate, almost invisible against the horizon, while on coasts or cliffs, mottled or grey individuals emerge, blending in with the rock. Its entire anatomy is geared toward hunting in the Arctic. Its extraordinarily keen eyesight locates prey at great distances. Its wings, wider and stronger than those of other falcons, allow it to maneuver in violent gusts without losing control. Even each feather serves a dual purpose, insulating from the cold while simultaneously optimizing aerodynamics. The entire system is sustained by a high metabolism, capable of sustaining prolonged flights in an environment where every second of activity involves an expenditure of energy. But what good is such precision in the body if it is not tested against real prey? In the open tundra, that opportunity appears in the form of a ptarmigan pecking in a clearing, searching for dried shoots under the snow. The falcon, invisible against the pale sky, waits for the right moment. Then it partially folds its wings and lets itself fall. The air whistles against its plumage, a brief, sharp sound. The partridge stops pecking and turns its head, restless, as if something in the environment has suddenly changed. In just seconds, the white body is shadowed, and the impact knocks it to the ground. The prey tries to thrash about, but the pressure of the talons immediately immobilizes it. With a swift swipe of its beak, the gerfalcon ends the hunt. Then it lands on a low rock out of the reach of the strongest wind. It plucks a few feathers, which scatter like flakes on the snow. Eat slowly here, every bite counts, and excess energy is saved for days when weather or scarcity forces you to fly further in search of food. Their mere presence in the ecosystem maintains balance, regulating the populations of birds and small mammals. In Greenland, this control is vital. A longer than normal winter, or a spring with little prey, can jeopardize the fragile chain that unites predators and prey. The falcon finishes its work and takes flight, disappearing into the grey horizon. In the air, he dominates without rivals, master of the tundra seen from above. But in this inhospitable region, not all birds fly over the tundra in search of prey. Some have renounced the sky altogether and have made the sea their territory. There, in direct contact with the icy waters, they deploy another form of resistance, different but equally effective. What happens when the survival of birds is not sought in the air but beneath the waves? On the ice-free coasts of southwest Greenland, the breeding season is underway at one of the largest chinstrap penguin colonies in the region. On the rocky areas, hundreds of pairs maintain their nests formed from small stones collected nearby. The density is such that each pair lives just steps away from its neighbors, making the colony a space where cooperation and competition meet daily. Among this crowd, every physical detail takes on significance. The chinstrap penguin gets its name from a thin, dark line running along the base of its head, a distinctive mark that differentiates it from other species. Beyond its appearance, its body is designed for a versatile lifestyle, with a medium size, contrasting plumage, and agility that allows it to move both in water and on land. During the breeding stage, all this adaptation is focused on two central objectives: protecting the nest and feeding the young. This double challenge sets the rhythm of the colony and defines the daily routine of each individual. Some birds head out to sea in search of food, while others remain on land to protect their nests. This morning, an adult returns from the sea after several hours of searching. It has swum among scattered ice floes and followed schools of krill and small fish that are abundant at this time of year. With its crop full of food for its young, it advances among other members of the colony, heading in opposite directions, some heading out to sea and others, like it, returning to land. The rocky surface is covered with wet patches and small puddles formed by the melting snow, forcing him to move with short, sure steps. A few meters from his nest, his mate awaits him. Amid the noise of the colony, each penguin is able to recognize its mate's specific calls. A brief exchange of vocalizations allows them to locate each other without error. However, something disrupts the routine. A larger neighbor has been near the nest for several minutes, and his presence has not gone unnoticed. In such confined spaces, tensions between individuals are inevitable. Some penguins try to steal other people's stones to reinforce their own nest, while others try to steal food intended for a chick. It is not uncommon for these strategies to be carried out under a guise of indifference, avoiding open confrontations that could cause injury. The intruder advances with slow steps, turning his head as if observing the surroundings, but reducing the distance with each movement. The newly arrived adult stops advancing and adopts an upright posture. The wings are slightly separated from the body and the neck is stretched, a way of increasing presence to a potential competitor. The neighbor responds with a slight nod and a deep call. Between them, the chick waits, partially protected by the mother's body. The interaction takes place in relative silence for a few seconds, something unusual in such a noisy colony. It's a time for evaluation, since neither of them wants to start a physical conflict that could end in injury. The newcomer makes a couple of short calls, accompanied by a sharp tap of its beak on the ground, and moves decisively towards the nest. The intruder takes a couple of steps back, keeping his gaze fixed. After thinking about it for a few seconds, the intruder moves away to another section of the colony. The tension dissipates and the adult can concentrate on finally feeding its young. The process is rapid. The food is regurgitated directly into the chick's beak, which swallows intermittently until it is satisfied. The pair remains by the nest for a few more minutes, adjusting stones and accommodating the youngster under the protection of their bodies. The colony resumes its steady rhythm. Some leave for the sea, others return, and similar little scenes are repeated in each nest. Life here is marked by short, repetitive cycles, but within them each day brings unique situations. Defending the nest and caring for the young are not tasks that are taken for granted. Each visit to the sea, each return to land involves silent negotiations with pesky neighbors. Today, the sea has been generous and the calf has received its food, but not far from there, another species shares the same coastline, and although seen out of the corner of its eye it could be mistaken for a penguin, it follows a different calendar and rules. How is it possible that two such similar birds have such different lifestyles? On the cliffs and coastal crevices of Greenland, the razorbill maintains its own territory. Its black and white silhouette is reminiscent of a penguin, but the comparison stops there, since the AUK belongs to the alcid family and is capable of alternating fast, straight flights with deep dives. While penguins are limited to swimming, the AUK can travel great distances over the sea in search of food. Outside of this period, the line becomes softer, the throat becomes clearer, and the area behind the eye loses intensity. These changes in plumage reflect how every detail of the AUK is geared towards survival. And if the markings on the head serve a function in communication and camouflage, the beak reveals another decisive adaptation: feeding. The robust-looking beak plays a key role. Its laterally compressed shape allows it to firmly grasp several fish at once without losing the ability to open and close its jaws to capture more prey. In the middle of the breeding season, an adult may return to the nest with up to 20 fish lined up in its beak, destined for its single chick. The diet consists mainly of small fish such as sand eels or juvenile herring, supplemented with crustaceans. But efficiency doesn't end with what it eats, but rather with how it obtains it, because to feed itself, the AOK is capable of flying more than 100 kilometers out to sea before diving and chasing its prey underwater. All that energy gathered at sea has one purpose: to ensure reproductive success on land. Reproduction begins with behavior that strengthens pair bonds. The razorbill is monogamous and many pairs remain together year after year. This fidelity has a clear advantage. It reduces the time adults must spend searching for a new mate each season, allowing them to concentrate their energy on breeding. Courtship displays include gentle beak taps, coordinated flights, and figures in which the two birds follow each other in precise patterns. Once the pair is established, both participate equally in incubation and caring for the chick. Unlike penguins, which tend to nest in large open colonies, the razorbill seeks the protection of rock crevices or natural hollows in cliffs. There it lays a single egg, which it incubates for about 6 weeks. The nest's location reduces the risk of ground predation, but forces adults to make regular flights to supply food. While one remains in the nest, the other heads out to sea, and both alternate between these roles constantly. That apparent calm on the cliffs hides its own level of tension. Life at the razorbill colony is less hectic than at the chinstrap penguin colony, but it is not without competition. The best rock holes are contested, and interactions include defensive postures, short calls, and warning gestures with the beak. The density of nests in some areas means that neighbors are only inches apart, requiring tolerance and coordination. This dynamic, although it may seem purely local, has broader repercussions. The way each pair establishes and survives is directly linked to the resources the sea makes available to them. Therefore, the role of the razorbill transcends its own reproductive cycle. In Greenland, this species clearly influences the coastal ecosystem. Its consumption of small fish helps regulate these populations, and in turn, the razorbills become food for marine predators and larger birds. At the same time, their presence and reproductive success serve as sensitive indicators of ocean health. Any variation in food availability or ocean conditions is immediately reflected in their colonies. While the chinstrap penguin continues its routine further south, the razorbill maintains its own cycle on the northern cliffs. Two birds that, despite sharing colors and coasts, live completely different stories. However, both depend on the same sea, and what happens in those waters in the coming months will determine the fate of both. But this fragile balance in Greenland is not only played out at sea. In the tundra, far from the cliffs and coastal colonies, another constant struggle between predators and prey also takes place, and there, unlike seabirds, not all prey simply accept their fate. Some have turned their fragility into a strategy, perfecting resources that allow them not only to escape, but also to completely outwit those who stalk them. Among them, the most notable in this unforgiving territory is the Arctic hare, an animal whose existence is shaped by an environment dominated for much of the year by a long, harsh winter. Here, the light barely touches the horizon for months, making the search for food difficult. The wind, unhindered, sweeps across the frozen tundra, exposing anyone who ventures far from their refuge, and the snow, compact and sharp, turns every movement into a test of endurance. For the hare, surviving in these conditions requires more than instinct. It needs a body and behavior shape to meet each of these challenges. It's not just a snowy rabbit. It's descended from much smaller and more vulnerable lagomorphs that inhabited temperate zones hundreds of thousands of years ago. But here in the Arctic, evolution has transformed it into something else. Its hind legs are long and powerful, capable of propelling it at speeds that easily outpace most of its predators over short distances. Their ears, unlike those of their southern relatives, have been reduced to minimize heat loss, although they retain the mobility and acuity necessary to detect any sound over the wind. And its fur is not just white and dense. It acts as a thermal insulator and perfect camouflage, rendering its silhouette invisible against the snowy landscape. But his greatest weapon is not his muscles or his camouflage, it is his cunning. One afternoon, as the blizzard eases for a few hours, a hare ventures out to scratch the snow in search of roots. Their movements are cautious, but the Arctic does not forgive carelessness, because several hundred meters away, an Arctic fox raises its head, fixes its gaze on the figure moving across the plain, and begins its approach. The silence of the snow allows the chase to begin without warning. The hare detects the threat too late, but its quick reaction may make the difference. In an instant, he goes from digging in the snow to running frantically, his long legs hitting the icy surface and throwing it in great leaps. The fox accelerates behind, relying not only on his sight, but on his sense of smell. Following the invisible line of the trail, the hare leaves in its wake. For endless meters, the chase remains even. The fox gains ground on straight stretches, the hare with each change of direction. But then the unexpected happens. Instead of continuing to flee forward, the hare slows down, makes a sharp turn toward a small snow-covered bush, and hides under its protection. His muscles tense, and he becomes completely motionless. What drives her to stop just when her life is most in danger? The fox, following the scent trail, does not notice the absence of movement. His nose guides him past the bush in a straight line, convinced that the prey is still ahead. In a matter of seconds, he is lost in the distance, still running after a trail that no longer exists. The key to this maneuver lies in the wind and the scent. By veering off course and stopping, the hare breaks the continuity of the trail the fox was following. The predator, unable to detect an immediate change, continues on its original path, moving further and further away from its prey's true location. This tactic, perfected over generations, turns the Arctic hare into a master of deception, able to survive not only by running faster, but also by thinking faster. When silence returns, the hare pokes its head out, listens, and resumes its search for food as if nothing had happened. In this landscape, where almost everything conspires against his life, he has won another battle. But here, no victory is definitive. In this far Arctic, even prey can emerge victorious, though only temporarily. Because winter doesn't last forever, and soon the tundra will change its rules. After months of darkness, silence, and perpetual ice, summer arrives like a silent explosion. The sunlight no longer hides. For weeks, the midnight sun phenomenon keeps the horizon illuminated 24 hours a day, allowing animal activity to continue without pause. The ice that once covered the coasts is now melting, releasing rivers and fjords from their slumber. The air is filled with sounds that had disappeared: the beating of wings, the splashing of bodies in the water, the crunching of hooves on wet earth. In Greenland, this brief interval of warmth and abundance marks the most important time of the year. Along the coast, ice-free waters attract narwhals and walruses, which come to feed on schools of fish and crustaceans. Their dark silhouettes move beneath the surface, occasionally coming up for air before diving back down in search of food. Under the sun that never sets, these marine giants can extend their hunting trips, taking advantage of the constant light to orient themselves and explore. Everything is part of the same scenario, where each species finds its place. On the fragmented surface, the seals rest unaware for the moment of the threats that lurk. On land, the plains that until recently were white deserts are covered with patches of green. This is the call of the caribou, who congregate in large groups to graze tirelessly. With constant light, their movements and feeding extend throughout the sunny night, altering the rhythm that in other latitudes is marked by day and darkness. Their arrival does not go unnoticed, because in the distance, wolves lurk, measuring every movement, waiting for the moment when an individual moves away from the protection of the group. In the air, thousands of migratory birds have returned to take advantage of the abundant prey. Geese, gulls, and loons occupy every available nesting spot. Their calls fill the sky, and their constant flights are a choreography dictated by the urgency of breeding. The midnight sun allows foraging trips to multiply, shortening the time between feedings to their young. This explosion of aerial life is also an ideal opportunity for predators. The Arctic fox, its fur now darker to blend in with rocks and bushes, explores the coast in search of nests, stealing eggs and chicks when the opportunity arises. At this time of year, life seems to intertwine in a complex web. A caribou comes down to drink from a stream that flows into the fjord. A few meters away, a narwhal pokes its blowhole out before disappearing underwater. On the nearby rocks, an Arctic fox waits patiently for a pair of birds to leave their nest. Each species is immersed in its own struggle, but all depend on this brief burst of energy that summer brings, enhanced by the uninterrupted light that accelerates the processes of hunting, reproduction, and growth. However, the weather at this specific time of year is not so predictable, because even in summer, a dense fog can cover the coast in minutes, making hunting difficult for birds and navigation difficult for marine mammals. Cold rains and biting winds can sweep through open valleys, forcing herbivores to seek shelter. And even though the ice retreats, it never completely disappears, serving as a living reminder that winter is always waiting to return. The abundance of summer is a fragile truce, and all specimens sense it perfectly. Predators take advantage to accumulate reserves, herbivores to raise the next generation, and birds to ensure their chicks can fly before the snow returns. During this same period, the ocean also enters its period of greatest activity. Schools of fish emerge from cold, dark waters, krill disperse in shallow layers, and this feast becomes a call that travels for miles underwater. Following that invisible signal, the white and grey silhouettes begin to arrive, breaking the calm. Belugas and narwhals drawn toward the shores. For the beluga whale, summer means opportunity and exposure. These robustly built, snowy-skinned cetaceans congregate in large groups near fjords and estuaries, where salmon and other fish swim upstream and where their calls echo underwater like a complex communication system. The endless light allows them to take advantage of every hour to feed and travel distances that would be impossible in winter. But this same constant activity in more open areas also increases their chances of being easily detected. This period of abundance brings a risk that does not come from any natural predator. In these waters, humans behave like hunters, using methods and reach that surpass any ecosystem strategy. Unlike an orca or a polar bear, which are limited in their prey, human vessels can chase and corral entire groups, firing harpoons or rifles at close range. Within minutes, the calm of the fjord is shattered by the echo of gunfire and the dry sound of bodies hitting the water. More than 2 decades ago, annual catches were around 1,000 specimens in various areas of the Arctic, and in Greenland, that pressure has barely diminished. After each day of hunting, the sea is marked. Bloodstains float on the surface, slowly carried by the tide, a trail that reveals the magnitude of the slaughter. This situation has forced the belugas to change their habits. Some groups move at night, taking advantage of the dim light of the Arctic dawn to blend in with the reflection of the water. Others have shifted their routes to areas with floating ice less accessible to boats. It's not a perfect defense, but it delays the moment when the hunter finds them again. And while belugas try to buy time in increasingly predictable territory for humans, narwhals face an almost identical risk, because its almost choreographed migratory pattern leads it each summer to bays and fjords where Arctic cod and squid abound. But that punctuality makes it easy to anticipate, and in hunting, predictability is a disadvantage. Just over a decade ago, in some regions of Greenland, authorized quotas reached nearly 400 specimens per season. In response, some narwhal populations have begun to quietly adjust their transit schedules, crossing risk points during times of lower human activity. An increase in prolonged, silent dives has also been documented, thus avoiding revealing their position on the surface. Thus, the same conditions that facilitate access to food and reduce energy expenditure are also those that allow humans to unleash their capacity for capture. While a natural predator is limited to the prey it can reach and process, human machinery combines fast boats, powerful weapons, and precise knowledge of these species' movement patterns. In this context, human presence is integrated into the threat chain as a unique predator capable of exerting constant and localized pressure. However, neither belugas nor narwhals are passive actors in this scenario, as experience accumulated over generations seems to be reflected in more cautious behavior, changes in route, movements outside of usual corridors, and even the use of underwater terrain to gain acoustic coverage. These adaptations do not eliminate risk, but they redistribute it, forcing the human hunter to modify his strategies as well. Thus, the summer season becomes a silent game, where each species measures its movements with precision. And while the ice hasn't returned, belugas and narwhals continue to roam a territory they know with astonishing accuracy, demonstrating that, even in the face of a predator as persistent as humans, life in the Arctic retains an inexhaustible capacity for response. But if some animals have learned to outwit the hunter, what about those who fear no predator, and yet see their survival in danger? In Greenland, summer brings an abundance that seems to benefit everyone, although for some it's also a trap. There are animals that suffer not from claws or harpoons, but from something much more subtle: heat. Accustomed to a world where cold is the norm rather than the exception, the musk ox is one of those who best know the rigors of winter. With a coat made up of an outer layer of long hairs that can reach almost a meter in length and an inner undercoat called kiviut, 8 times warmer than sheep's wool, this mammal is designed to withstand winters of up to 40 degrees below zero without showing signs of exhaustion. In these extreme temperatures, it is able to maintain a stable body temperature even during snowstorms, as the cold does not represent a threat, but rather the natural state to which it was molded over thousands of years of evolution. But that same strength turns against him when the temperature rises above 10 degrees above zero. Then the thick coat that protects him in winter becomes a burden. Unable to shed its thick fur, the musk ox does not migrate long distances to escape the heat, but rather seeks higher elevations or wind-exposed slopes where the air is cooler and the sun less scorching. During the central hours of the day, they minimize their activity, preferring to graze at dawn or dusk and maintaining a slow, measured gait to conserve energy and avoid overheating. But it's not the heat itself that bothers him most in this season. As summer progresses and temperatures favor the formation of wetlands, a much smaller but constant threat emerges: parasitic insects. In this environment, mosquitoes and horseflies emerge in large numbers, feeding on the oxen's blood and harassing them for hours without rest. These insects not only cause irritation, they can also transmit diseases and weaken multiple individuals through continuous blood loss. On particularly hot days, the mosquito swarms are so dense that the oxen barely raise their heads to graze, too busy waving them to scare away the invaders. An adult male, weighing more than 300 kilos, can move with desperate slowness, seeking air currents that interrupt the flight of insects or remaining on patches of snow that still resist, where the lower temperature drives away parasites. In the open tundra, the herd also becomes a collective shield. The oxen huddle together, and the constant movement of so many bodies confuses the insects, distracting them. It's a strategy of resistance. They can't eliminate them, but they can minimize their impact. When the wind finally blows, it carries the insects away and breaks the clouds surrounding them, giving them a respite that, although brief, allows them to graze again with some peace of mind. Thus, summer for the musk ox is a season of contrasts. An abundance of food is assured, but in return they must endure the heat and the incessant harassment of insects. Here, the threat doesn't always come with fangs or claws. Sometimes it's barely visible, measured in endless buzzing. But in the tundra, each species faces its own challenges. For some, the fight isn't against the weather or swarms of insects, but against an enemy lurking far above. Who can attack without leaving a trace in the snow and without the victim seeing it coming? This silent predator finds the perfect setting to act in the middle of summer. The Arctic landscape, once covered in snow, now displays patches of green that break the monotony of the terrain. The fjords are free of ice, and the wind carries the scent of seaweed and sediment from the coast. It's a short but intense time. Millions of migratory birds breed, young mammals take their first steps, and the endless hours of the midnight sun allow for feeding at any time. But this abundance is not without risk. In a territory where multiple land and sea predators have already taken advantage of the season, there is one hunter who observes from another perspective, the air. The snowy owl, one of Greenland's most precise predators, occupies a unique place in this ecosystem. It prefers open, unobstructed areas from where it can monitor and detect prey at a great distance. It doesn't hide in forests or take refuge in caves. Here, where there are hardly any trees, the tundra is its territory. Its nest is not hidden. It is a simple depression in the ground, located on a rise from which it has a clear field of vision. From there, a female watches over her chicks, while the male travels across vast areas in search of food. In summer, the snowy owl finds its best breeding opportunity. Prey availability is much greater than in winter: lemmings, young shorebirds, and even gull and goose chicks. Its strategy doesn't depend on prolonged pursuit. This predator bases its success on two advantages: keen eyesight, capable of detecting even the smallest movement at great distances, and silent flight, thanks to the structure of its feathers, which disrupt airflow and muffle sound. Another of its most striking adaptations is the ability to turn its head up to 270 degrees. This movement, made possible by a special cervical joint and a circulatory system that prevents blood flow to the brain from being cut off, allows you to expand your field of vision without having to move your body. This reduces the likelihood of being detected by its prey and makes it easier for it to monitor a large section of its territory from a single position. Now, in an area where the terrain slopes down to the coast, an adult male stands on a rock. From there, he observes a group of young geese grazing near the water, accompanied by a vigilant adult. The owl doesn't move, only its head turns, following the bird's movements. The wind blows from the sea, carrying the scent away from the dams. For several minutes, nothing happens. The male remains motionless, measuring the distance and angle of approach. Then, with a brief burst, it spreads its wings. The flight is low and controlled, almost parallel to the ground. There is not a single sound to betray its approach. Just a few meters from the group, it makes a sudden change of direction. Its wings partially close, and in a second, its claws close on one of the chicks. The attack lasts less than 5 seconds. The rest of the group flees into the water while the adult attempts to belatedly warn of the danger. Within moments, the owl flies away, carrying the prey inside. He doesn't eat on the spot. Food is provided for his mate and their chicks, who wait in the nest. In the distance, the female watches and emits a brief sound when she sees the male returning. Despite this and other opportunities when the owl finds easy prey, the season of abundance does not last long. In just a few weeks, migratory species will leave, lemmings will reduce their activity, and temperatures will drop. Faced with this sudden change in food availability, the snowy owl will also abandon the area, moving to more temperate latitudes or adapting to more difficult hunting in winter. But for now, the weather is in his favor, and he should make the most of this short period of time and abundance. Every successful hunt means another day of survival for their young, and every mistake can mean the difference between life and death in the days to come. And when winter claims this territory again, only the trace of the wings that once dominated the sky will remain. Like the owl, every inhabitant of Greenland lives marked by the same relentless cycle. Here, abundance and scarcity follow one another with unremitting precision, and each season brings challenges that require constant adaptation. Along its icy shores, endless fjords and windswept plateaus, Greenland reveals itself as a land of extreme contrasts. From glaciers that carve in colossal blocks to the tundra, where every inch of free soil is exploited, this vast island is home to ecosystems shaped by centuries of adaptation. In these latitudes, where winter darkness and the midnight sun dictate the pulse of the seasons, life has learned to thrive without room for error. The grey wolf travels impossible distances, following trails that vanish in the blizzard, combining endurance and coordination to hunt down elusive prey. For its part, the polar bear, master of the sea ice, perfects immobility to the extreme, merging with the landscape until the precise moment breaks its stillness. On cliffs and open coasts, the razorbill faces the rough sea and the pressure of an open sky, alternating clumsiness on land with an underwater skill that allows it to survive where few birds can. Further inland, the Arctic hare makes its way through the heart of winter with paws that seem designed to cut through the snow and an intelligence that allows it to deceive its pursuers, breaking patterns that any other herbivore would follow. And when summer covers the nights with uninterrupted light, an expectant silence dominates the open areas. From a high vantage point, the snowy owl observes every detail, turning its head to encompass an impossible field of vision. Its attack, when it comes, is the culmination of patience, precision, and strength, executed with an economy of movement that makes it clear why it is one of the most effective predators in these lands. Each of these individuals has developed unique strategies to survive in Greenland, because simply resisting the cold, the lack of shelter, or the irregularity of the seasons is necessary. It is necessary to master skills that would be unnecessary elsewhere, but which here are the key to survival. From the most relentless hunters to the most resourceful prey, all are part of a balance maintained through constant and precise adaptation. Greenland isn't just a remote territory. It's a place where evolution tirelessly refines, sculpting creatures that exist nowhere else on the planet. Here, life doesn't just endure, it transforms, responds to unique challenges, and demonstrates that even at the very edge of the world, nature can achieve forms of balance and perfection that defy all expectations. And even though the seasons change and the years pass, this cycle does not stop. On the coasts, in the fjords, and on the eternal ice, the struggle and adaptation continue, invisible to most but as constant as the deep heartbeat of this land.